Like to call back to order the July 18th, 2013 Board of Education meeting. We have the Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Mr. George Miles, a retired teacher at John F. Kennedy High School, and Commander Tom Jones of the U.S. Navy, retired, of Luther Burbank High School NJROTC program. Gentlemen.
Test.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bio or something. So we have these certificates, and did you want to? Certificates are coming your
Thank
way.
you. Can I just say thank you to the board for your support of our program? I really, really appreciate your tremendous support. We've got a lot of kids in our program, and as you know, some of them just need good opportunities, and that's what you're giving them by helping us. I appreciate it.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Yes. We have a comment by Vice President Kennedy. Want to do it now?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to respond to the commander because every time we get a JROTC person up here, I can't stop but hit the button because I'm one of those people that JROTC probably saved my life. So what you guys do is phenomenal, and you provide structure, you provide discipline, you provide direction to kids that otherwise might not have it. And so thank you very much for what you do. At a time when you could have sat back on a pretty cushy retirement, you decided to give back, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. I started off in a college ROTC program, and it changed my life, and that's why I'm here. And I see from what I've only done this for about a year and a half, but in two different districts. This district is very supportive of our program and all of the ROTC programs, and we're very appreciative of that. And like you said, we do save lives in our program. I've seen it at least 10 times in the time that I've been teaching, where kids leave gangs and come join our group, and they are some of our best cadets by the end of the year. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
A picture? Oh yeah, go ahead, sir. Sorry.
Just real briefly, I taught in this district for 26 years, and I want to thank you for that opportunity. It's been a wonderful experience for me, and I have worked with some of the really coolest kids over those years that you can imagine, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we have a presentation by Thomas Burris, if I pronounced that correctly, I hope. Martin Luther King Jr., 365.
Good evening, Chair, members of the school board. My name is Thomas Burris. I'm the March Director for MLK 365. With me is Mr. Roy Kaufman, who is the lead for the march. And I've been doing this for 20 some odd years, about 25, 26, somewhere in that area. But it never gets old. And I always get nervous when I come up here and get ready to speak. I don't know why that is,
There's no
but
reason.
I do. It's a pleasure, though, to be before you this evening to make these presentations to these two schools. But first of all, before we do the schools, we're going to make a special presentation to Mr. Miles. Mr. Miles has supported this program for, the last 6 years or something like that? For the last 6 years with the high school, and they've always been there. Rain, shine, it didn't make any difference. right? In fact, I talked to him one day and I said, Mr. Miles, it's going to be raining. He said, we march in the rain too. And they did. And we're just so proud of them. And we just wanted to say thank you to him upon his retirement. So just to read a little bit of this, if I put my glasses on. It says, Mr. George Miles, Band Director, John F. Kennedy High School, dedicated service. Through the years, you've grown with us, giving your time with loyalty and dedication. Today, we honor the contributions you've made and the milestones you've achieved. We can't imagine us without you. MLK 365, March for the Dream Team, March 2013. And we have actually 2 plaques because we weren't able to get in here last year to present these. So we have 2 plaques that we're going to give Mr. Miles tonight, one for last year's marching band and one for the year before. So we have both of them. Then this year, we were really privileged to have the NJROTC participate in the march. And if you attended the march, then at the Capitol, you saw their drill team perform, right? And you saw these kids, they were outstanding. And we were just so proud to have them, looking forward to having them again next year. So we want to present this plaque to Commander Jones, right, so that the kids will have something to be able to look up to when they come to school next year. And last but not least, we would just like to thank you, the school board, for support that we've received over the years. This year, you allowed us to use the parking lot at Keith B. Kinney to park automobiles so that we could have them secured, and we really appreciate that. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you out there with us marching that 6 miles this year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Want to take a picture? This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel, and the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Today's meeting will be replayed Sunday, July 21st at 9 a.m. and Monday, July 22nd at noon on Channel 14, and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located in the back of the community room and give it to our Chief Communications Officer, Mr. Gabe Ross. Prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation, please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Responses to questions by the public will be posted on the district website prior to the next board meeting. Please limit comments during public comment to items not listed on the agenda. If you're found to be commenting on an item that is on the agenda, you'll be asked to defer until your item comes up on the agenda. Also, please turn off all your cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate. We have item 5.0, a special presentation. 5.1, Carpenters Local Union 46, Mr. Mike Leon.
Such an empty room tonight. Michael Leong with the Carpenters Local 46 here in Sacramento. Talking to my wife in the audience a minute ago, I just realized I graduated from John F. Kennedy from the school district 35 years ago. I'm getting old. So I want to thank the school board and the school district for having ongoing relationship with the Carpenters, with the Construction Academy, and trying to put young men and women to work into the construction trades. We all know the majority of our children do not go to a 4-year college. And we claim to be anyway, the other 4-year program. Most people don't know when they say the kids, I'm not going to go to school, I'm not going to go to school. They join an apprenticeship program they also join a junior college. You know, our system is tied in with Los Rios Community College. You get college credits. You can take some your general ed, and you get your AA in construction. There was a big push a few years ago, you know, the school to work, earn while you learn. We've been doing that for over 100 years, and we're still doing it, and we will keep doing it. I've worked with several people to do scholarships and picking awards. Our scholarship always goes for the people who more need it financially, but they do have the grades, and they may not be, you know, looking at a four-year college because they can't afford it. So our system helps them at least get into a two-year college or a four-year college if that's the way they want to go. But I have a check here for $7,500 to continue our scholarship fund. We did do another 3 participants just this year at $1,000 apiece. Christina helped this year, right? I forgot it. We do this with a lot of different school districts. And I'm bad at writing things down and remembering. Linda McNeil, who works for the school district here, always does a very wonderful job of reminding me, hey, we got some scholarships coming up. You know, you need to come pick them up. Did you deliver another check? You know, she's on the ball. She does a really good job. Just so I want to say thank you. So on the behalf of Union Carpenters and Local 46 in Sacramento, check for $7,500 to me. I don't want to rush them. Thank you.
We have Member Rodriguez. Just a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Leong, for your continued support of our students at Sac City Unified. Through the years, I know you've come up here the last 5 since I've been here and asked us to do something good with this, with the funds that you're providing to us. And so now that we have a new CFO, I'd like for him to share in this idea in that perhaps one day we could get to the point where we're infusing this account with some of our own matching funds. And so I think that, you need to hear that. I know that we're not in a circumstance right now to be able to do that, but if you could just keep that in the to-do list at some point in the very distant future at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have item 6.0, announcement of action taken in closed session.
Thank you, Board President. On item 3.1A, both cases there, Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2012-120335, and case number 2013-030-203. In both cases, a settlement was approved unanimously 4-0, with members Pritchett, Arroyo, and Rodriguez absent at the moment. Both settlements provide for resolution of special education claims and providing for compensatory education for the students. Thank you.
Thank you. We have public comment.
Comment from Leo Bennett Cochon.
Good evening, Leo Bennett Cochon. I tried to get here for closed session but missed it by a couple of minutes. I appreciate that you announced how many were there, but Member Hanson, I know, was also rushing, so I continue to urge you not to leave this room until you actually have a quorum, because that's what you did last time I was here. You voted 4-0. I could be wrong, but that's my assumption when I do the math. That when I see Member Hanson, 3 folks went. That is what I observed the meeting before. I am disappointed that we are not hearing that you have decided to drop the lawsuit. I'd like to ask the specific question. How much is the lawsuit costing us? And why can't we do the right thing and put it on hold? I'm assuming you've all read the expert testimony, and I'd like to read it. And it states from Professor Galita, that there's been a breakage in the contract of moral obligations families assume with their school district, that the sense of moral obligation on behalf of those in decision-making roles towards members of the marginalized is weak. With weakened ties, those on the periphery become an afterthought. Their struggles are not interpreted as injustice, and conditions of exclusion persist. This arrangement of relationships and hierarchy operate implicitly. She quotes Professor Opto, "Structural violence is gradual, imperceptible, and diffused in society as the way things are done. Those whose voice is systematically heard or ignored, who gets particular resources and who goes without them. Structural violence occurs as inequalities are structured into a society. Because structural violence blurs agency and no one person directly injures another, that's our problem. I again urge you to read all the expert testimony, listen to the parents. One more year is all anybody's asking. You've admitted from your staff there is no deficit. Thank you, Democrats, Governor Brown. ADA is stable. Keep the schools open. Thank you.
Thank you. 7.0, agenda adoption. I'll move the agenda. Second by Vice President Wu. We have a public comment.
Comment from Leo Bennett Koshan.
Again, I would like to ask the specific question, and I'm grateful that the district is posting answers on the website. The specific question is why a waiver for Joseph Bonheim is not on the agenda, why a response to the request for the agenda item has not been given back to me, which is board policy, as I've pointed out in the past, why I cannot find out when the executive committee meets publicly so that I can attend, as is my right, and I've done in the past. So if we could have those three questions answered, that would be awesome. They did answer why the request is being denied. It's being denied because it was given on June 12th. Conversion charters have an earlier deadline, and startup charters have an earlier deadline. Ironically, that deadline was before the closure process started. So unless we teach crystal ball gazing in this district, I urge you to put their waiver request on the agenda. You have a moral obligation. They put a lot of work into that. Other places that have had a year-long process, as recommended by CDE, sites have conversion charters ready to go as a backup if they're closed. Give Joseph Bonheim its hearing. Nothing less is acceptable. Thank you.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda by myself, a second by Vice President Wu. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We have an agenda. 8.0, public comment.
We have 4 comments on 8.0 from Leo Bennett Koshan, Ralph Merletti, Karen Sweat, and Lawson Stewart.
If I could have the education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Happy Nelson Mandela International Day. Education apartheid that characterizes the segmented and structural ideological racism embedded in school policies and resource distribution is my topic. I'm backed up in the topic by these professors, and I call you again to the conclusion of the expert opinion that it's clear that the use of school closure, which creates educational apartheid, is educationally unsound and meets neither a strategic nor moral threshold for effective leadership on the part of the Sacramento City Unified School Board. President Cuneo, please, today we're all South Africans. You do not have to be the president that kept Mandela in jail. You can be president-elect, the one that was willing to reach across the divide and find common ground. You said you will never, ever talk about closures again. Please change that opinion as the Afrikaners were able to change their opinion. Here are the data charts that show these are the schools you've closed in the past. They look pretty integrated, pretty balanced. Here's what replaced them at each site. They don't look pretty integrated. They don't look pretty balanced. You're closing another set of schools, all of which look pretty integrated, pretty balanced, pretty heavy on the Hispanic side, but pretty good representation. Here are the ones you've skipped. They don't look integrated. They don't balance. If you have a certain threshold of white students, it looks like you might get away with it. This is your diversity in Sacramento Unified.
Please wrap it up.
That should be the goal. I've tried to develop a chart so that you could see it. These are the ones that have been closed in the past. These are the ones that have been replaced.
Please finish up.
These are the ones you're proposing to close. Here are schools that you've skipped or not even considered. Everybody I've shown these visuals to sees apartheid.
Thank you very
sees
much.
White dominance.
Thank you very much. If we could finish, please. Thank you.
These are the other remaining schools to be closed. Again, you will see the same pattern. It's not evident within William Land in Washington, so perhaps there's another correlation variable. Rather than just saying it's an issue of white power, perhaps it's an issue of too
Mr.
many
Sean,
Hispanics.
your time is up.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, school board. I'm Ralph Merletti from the Fruit Ridge area of South Sacramento. And what I was going to comment on tonight is no longer up there, so I will just say what I was going to say on that. All right, now I'm glad to see that No Time to Lose banner is no longer up there. It was up during the summer last year, and had again appeared this summer as I reviewed some of the last two meetings and video. And now that I'm glad to see that now all the signs are back to welcoming everybody. As for that sign, for the banner, I felt that it was grandstanding and overemphasizing an interest group that has aberrational behavior and lifestyle. I would have a question on some of that. Why is the rainbow associated with that group? It belongs to all of us, not just them. You know, it's the same way with the main word they use to describe themselves that used to mean festive, happy, and joyful. Now, as for the letters, LB, LGBTQ, why would anyone want to be identified with the last letter Q, one meaning questioning, but the other, it seems like a slur. So I don't understand that. Now, I'm all for anti-bullying policies that have been implemented, but not for mainstreaming of their personal behavior. Everybody deserves protection from harm, whether physical or verbal or mental, psychological, and so on, but not every lifestyle should be promoted and mainstreamed, especially if it would seem that it was going to lead to same-gender marriage. Therefore, I say, as to the interest group, protection, yes, promotion, no. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. My name is Karen Sweat. Over the past few weeks, I've been working with a couple of you, reading the district budgets. To be more specific, we've been looking at the unaudited actuals. We did a little work with the MYPs and the interims and even the adopted, but primarily looking at the unauditeds. Our main focus was the general fund. We did look at some of the other funds as well. What we saw together is that there has not been a structural deficit in the general fund. We are guessing there will not be a structural deficit in 2012-13, and because of LCFF, we're quite confident there will not be a structural deficit in the near future. What we did see when we were looking at these documents, and what we did is kind of a side-by-side with the PowerPoint presentations. We saw some inconsistencies in dollar amounts and information that was being presented. The first PowerPoint, 75 pages on June 13th, and the second one on the 20th, 49 pages, had some information in there that actually you could see in 9 pages of the adopted budget. 9 pages, and you can identify the cell number, you can identify the column, and you can be held accountable. You can't be held accountable to 124 pages of PowerPoint presentations, but you can look at a 9-page budget document and look as you trend it out what's going on. You need to look at these documents. Because I know you're all capable of doing that, I'm going to urge you to drop the practice of PowerPoint budgeting and begin budgeting by using the budget. We also did some comparisons of numbers between the PowerPoints, some other comments there. The most worrisome examples on page 25 of the June 13, 75-page PowerPoint, we were talking about ending fund balance. There's 10 accounts in the ending fund balance. That PowerPoint only drew your attention to 5 of them, and there's 2 that are extremely important, one being where, in fact, that's 9780 is where you'll see the $1 million that's a set aside for future benefits, health benefits. It's a very important account. It was not included on your lesson regarding how to read a budget. It didn't really give you any information. There's another $10 million error. Bottom line, budgets, not PowerPoints. Thanks.
Thank you.
Most of you are familiar faces. This is just an introduction requested by the Bond Oversight Committee. My name is Lawson Stewart, and I am now chair of the Bond Oversight Committee for Q&R. Rachel Minnick has been given the position of the vice chair position, and we wanted to make sure that we let each and every one of you know that we're looking forward to working with you. We're looking forward to making sure that we perform our duties, and sorry, I'm a little excited. I became an uncle sitting right over there like 5 minutes ago. So
you cleaned it up.
I'm really looking forward. I know the majority of you and have had the chance to have conversations with each and every one of you, interact on different levels. I'm really looking forward to this opportunity. I'd like to thank the members of the board for putting me in a position of trust, and I'm really looking forward to doing everything we can to do a really, really good job. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And for the record, there was 1:05 left.
That was very quick, very swift. We have item 9.0.
I'm sorry, President Cunha. We have one more comment on 8.0
okay.
from Grace Trujillo.
Sorry, Grace. Didn't see you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Grace Trujillo. The reason I decided to speak right now in public comment was I've been going to public hearings at the Board of Education. And once I went over there, I started asking what the new funding formula, saying all this money is going to be coming in. One of the areas that I was speaking in is the fact that they want emergency regulations put in place. I said, you know what? The current regulations put in place are not being enforced. Why are you concerned about putting additional ones? People are not listening to us. I said, all you have to do is listen to the board in Sacramento, and they're not listening to what we're saying. We want to get together and have a simple audit committee, and we cannot even get that. And that's part of the regulations. There's one thing I've learned, taking time off for my son with special needs, there's always someone you answer to. And the more people unite and get together and respond, there's always someone to report to. I think Enron was a good example of what happens when you play around with numbers and there's alterations. That's what's happened to our schools. There's billions of dollars that are going to be given out, and there's no regulations in place, and they're not being enforced or followed. One of the biggest things that, like I said, to speak up, we first have to fix that. Otherwise, we're not going to fix our schools. We're all part of it. We all have a piece in this pie. And if we don't work together, it's going to get worse. Like I said, there's going to be another child left behind next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9.0, consent agenda. I believe we have public comment on 9.0.
We have a public comment on 9.1E and a comment on 9.1G.
Bye.
The comment on 9.1E is from Leo Bennett Cochon,
Okay.
and the comment on G is from a different speaker.
Oh, okay. You want to speak now, or? Sure. And who's the other speaker? I'm sorry, Ms. Ross.
Mr. Merletti on 9.1G.
Okay. Mr. Marley, do you mind going after Mr. Bennett-Cochon? Okay.
On the minutes for June 13th, on page 3, it states that at the end, I requested an answer for the consideration of the lawsuit added, and I believe perhaps the word was dropped. I haven't had a chance to actually listen to myself, but either it was adding it during public, because I know I urged that once, or I've also obviously urged it to be dropped. So I'm just asking, perhaps you could just eliminate the word added, and then it at least would read sensibly. Trying to make a joke, Patrick. I had an eye exam today, and I have a senile cataract, so perhaps I have some excuses now. On page 5, it states, I requested a copy of the quote when the board president and the superintendent responded to the lawsuit. I have not received that quote, nor have it been seen posted on the website. On page 6, it states that Member Hansen asked to be provided a list of students who are leaving the district that was part of the closed schools. I've not seen that list provided nor seen it posted on the website. On the minutes for June 20th, on page 3, it says that I commented on the school closure and Joseph Bonheim becoming a charter school. I believe I also requested that it be an agenda item, and I think it's important that that be noted in the record that the public has continuously asked you for an agenda item concerning that item, and if not an agenda item, then the waiver request. We continue to petition you for that. Thank you.
Once again, I'm Ralph Merletti. As a person who myself is credentialed in geosciences, I applaud the decision to have an honors course in geology available to the Sacramento City Unified School District. I guess this one at Rosemont High School. Since the earth sciences have long been a neglected set of science subjects, with the main emphasis on college prep and lab and biology, chemistry, and physics. I made a reference to this last fall when I spoke and wrote in favor of more emphasis on the earth sciences, especially astronomy. Now, the only downside to this is the company McGraw-Hill that publishes the geology text to be used. McGraw-Hill, among many other companies, has been known to donate to Planned Parenthood at some time. Many people and corporations treat Planned Parenthood as though it were a charity. Realistically, Realistically, Planned Parenthood is a big business, a brutal one at that, with all the abortions killing the unborn. So perhaps sending complaints to these companies would be, that would certainly be in order. Now, as for the coursework, I hope that we will also see courses in the other earth sciences, especially meteorology, weather and climate, oceanography, and especially astronomy. The wonderful thing about earth science is that you don't need a laboratory to begin such studies. It's all around us in the ground, the atmosphere, and the sky. We are immersed in these subjects, these concepts, every time we step outside. So again, congratulations on this venture. Thank you.
In regard to the consent agenda, I will move the item with the amendments given by Mr. Bennett-Cochon in his public comment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice President Kennedy. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Consent agenda is passed. We have item 10.0 communications, 10.1 employee organization reports, CSA, SCTA, CIU.
Good evening, President Cuneo, board members, Ms. Cummings. Ian Arnold, representing SEIU Local 1021, representing your classified employees. We've heard from a couple of folks this evening about the structural deficit and about the way the district budgets and about the way the district presents its budget. I hate the term structural deficit. It has become a buzzword ever since the economy tanked. We don't have a structural deficit. I will challenge anybody to show me that we have a structural deficit. We have a cyclical deficit. In good times, we may have spent more money than we should and put away less for rainy days than we should have. But in bad times, we draw down on the reserve. That's what we do. I run a structural deficit every December when I'm doing my holiday shopping. I guarantee you I spend more money than I take in. Doesn't mean that I'm completely broke. Now, when it comes to actually presenting the budget or providing the budget, and I said this the last time I spoke, there are areas that the district could potentially cut, but it doesn't appear that anybody's looking at those areas. If I'm looking at my own personal budget, I want my kids to have karate lessons, piano lessons, new clothes. I'd love to have my car detailed every week, but I got to pay the mortgage first. And it seems to me, in looking at the district's priorities, we're spending a lot of money on the frills and we're losing the basics. And I want to remind you that we've lost a lot of teachers in the last few years. We've lost a lot of classified employees in the last few years. And again, the last time I got up and spoke, we talked about folks who've been here 29 years who are out the door with no place to go. I mean, that's outrageous. And we've got 301 people either lost their jobs completely or had their hours reduced to the point where they have no benefits whatsoever. Is that really how we want to be spending our money? Providing the frills, but taking those folks who provide direct services to the students out of the classroom when we could potentially look at our budget and decide what's most important. So again, I urge you to take another look at your budget and decide really and truly what this district is supposed to be doing, decide which initiatives and which programs work, decide where you've got the best bang for your buck, and continue those programs. The programs that we're spending money on that have not been successful or that have run their course, let's cut them off, and then let's figure out how to put people back to work so we've got the right number of people working with our kids. Thanks.
Thank you. We have Teamsters, UPE. We have public comment on 10.1.
Comment from Leo Bennett-Cochon.
Public comment before.
Thank you. Those were wonderful comments.
Please listen to your employees. Listen to the wisdom that they're sharing. Listen to your moral obligation. To have people without benefits, 301 people, and talk about building up your reserves, as I know will be the proposal later, is not moral. First, we need to take care of people that have been serving the district and children for as long as was shared. That's in the state documents, that's in the recommendations. First, regain the lost ground, rebuild the foundations that have been deficitated. Then we can talk about our reserves. I point out that the employees in the note I sent you in your actuals, which is the only real data we have, we've got to ground projections in actuals, are $4 million less if you add up salaries and benefits both. You can't focus on just benefits. People cost both items. Your employee groups have traditionally given up pay in order to have benefits, and we're at about 82%. Most districts are about 85%. We're okay. We need to have a conversation about benefits, but let's first rebuild our foundations. Let's respect our teachers, let's respect our classified, and let's get everybody back on board singing the same song. You just heard good music. I hope you can dance to it. Thank you.
Item 10.2, District Parent Advisory Committees. Community Advisory Committee. District Advisory Council. School Sites Councils. District English Learner Advisory Committee. Gifted and Talented Education Advisory Committee. Indian Education Parent Committee. Sacramento Council of Parent-Teacher Association. We have public comment.
Mr. Leo Bennett Koshan.
Should I observe a minute of silence? Since none of our parent groups, we need to be able to build the outreach. It's been shared that we didn't have good turnout in a lot of the transition programs. That's not an excuse. We need to set the bar, set it high, and keep it there. If people aren't showing up at these critical times for a budget workshop, we need to know why they weren't here addressing you so the board gets the benefit of everybody's perspective. I'm here to urge you to consider again to extend an invitation to the Black Parallel School Board. As was shared last time, the Council of the Parent-Teacher Association is not a district group. It's wonderful that you extend that invitation to them. I'd like you to expand that wonder, and especially on Nelson Mandela Day, especially on the recognition of the Martin Luther King Parade. I think today we're supposed to bring smiles to people's faces. So I would urge a member of the board to put it on the agenda for the future so that we can see this discussion. Thank you.
Ten 10.5, we have student member report from our new student board member, Margarita Kovalchuk.
Make it good.
Yeah. All right, turn on the microphone. There you go.
Good evening. My name is Margarita Kovalchuk, and I was elected to the position of student board member by the Student Advisory Council, which is composed of student representatives from Sacramento City Unified School District high schools. As an SUSD student since kindergarten, I have attended Golden Empire Elementary School, Isidore Cohen Elementary School, Albert Einstein Middle School, and now West Campus High School, where I am a rising senior. To me, being a student board member on the school board means providing a youth perspective on relevant issues, and I hope I will be able to live up to fill the shoes of previous board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Nice to have you here. We have Member Hanson.
Margaret, I just wanted to welcome you to the school board and to the meetings, and it'll be an exciting year like it is for all of us, every meeting. You'll get to know some of our very special guests who like to come up to the microphone all the time. So there's all sorts of people that are part of our extended family here. It's a pleasure to have you here, and welcome to the school board.
Thank you.
And she'll be introduced to one shortly because we have public comment.
Leo Bennett Koshan.
Thank you, Member Hanson. That was a very worthwhile and warm introduction. It is a true honor to be part of your Rainbow family. Welcome to the school board. Due to the senile cataract, I have trouble with names. Trustee Klovachuk, forgive me if I got it wrong. Margarita will be easier because that's my mother's name. I would urge the board to put on the agenda, and I'm asking the question, so perhaps it could be posted too. What is the role of the student board member? When I read the policy, the student board member has an active role, an equal participant except in executive session and voting on personnel matters. Even though her vote doesn't count, your policy says she should vote first. We talk about children, students first. I think that would be a great cultural change going into the new year, is to have the student board member vote first so that you know what the advice is of the students. Perhaps if the student board member's vote had been listened to, cast first, we wouldn't have had a 4-4 vote concerning school closures. Perhaps one member of the majority of 4 could have listened to the student voice. So welcome to this board, and it's a pleasure to be one of the special guests.
We have item 10.6, information sharing by board members. We have a few board members. We have Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Cunyo. Over the past month, I've been meeting with members of my community, leaders from the PTA, PTO, PTG groups, the sports academies that we have in the area, and our school site council representatives in Area 3. I feel that after the school closure decision was made, there was a lot of stir in all of our neighborhoods. So I took this opportunity to form this group and discuss how we can better the schools that we do have. And in my area in particular, we face enrollment issues, like any other area sitting on this board. And so this group, we now meet once a month, and we have a representative from Assemblymember Ken Cooley's office from the Education Department that meets with us as well. And so I encourage the rest of my board members to do the same, meet with your communities and find out that what's important to them. This next meeting, we'll be starting to meet with our principals to discuss pros and cons of our schools and how we as community leaders can help fix those issues.
Thank you. Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Cuneo. I just want to say that it was my pleasure to represent the district, the school district, this past Sunday, along with Dr. Olavine Roberts at the Vision 2000 Math and Reading Academy graduation, where part of our we are a sponsor for the program, and I got to see 200 underserved children graduate, and all of them are moving forward and improving on both their math and their reading skills and their API scores.
Thank you. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Cunyo. I'd like to share that I had the pleasure of attending NALEO's annual conference with Board Member Pritchett. We discussed items at this conference such as early childhood education, teacher effectiveness, and amongst other things, as it's such a topic for discussion this evening, but how to work with your LGBT community as an elected official. I think it is important that we reach out to all aspects of our community and respect them in every way possible, because everyone is a human being. We did talk about parent engagement in the era of education reform. If you want to know the other agenda items, I encourage you to go to NALEO, NALEO.org, and review the agenda there for the topics that we learned about during our 3-day conference. Okay. Thank you, Vice President. NALEO is a national association for Latino and elected appointed officials, and that's what it stands for. Also, I come to the board and want to share something that I'm experiencing in one of my neighborhoods. I've made a call to the city of Sacramento to come out and do a neighborhood cleanup around Woodbine Elementary School. And I know you're very familiar with it. And it has been a long-standing problem going back to years. You can go to Google and still see pretty much the same result like you see today if you drive up and down the street. So I welcome any recommendation that we get from the board and from our representative unions out there, and the teachers or SEIU, UPE, and our Teamsters. And I'm probably forgetting one more. But please, let's work together as a community and clean up the Woodbine Elementary School area. It just breaks my heart to see that children have to go to school having to walk over trash and weeds and tires and other abandoned items in the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. We have public comment.
Leo Bennett Koshan.
Thank you, Trustee Pritchett, for demonstrating best practice. It's what should have happened before schools were closed, a 5-week process. It's not too late. I know I'm a broken record, but if you hope as a special ed teacher, you repeat 500, you repeat 1,000, you repeat 2,000, you never know when the learning moment will occur. So again, communities should be consulted, as Trustee Pritchett is urging you. Give it a 1-year wait. You'll save money. It'll be good for everybody. Let's listen to our communities. Thank you, Trustee Darrell, for speaking about API and math. A few numbers. Joseph Bonheim grew 24 API points. It's rewarded by being closed. Joseph Bonheim, Mark Hopkins, CB Wire, all above 400 students, the district's old break-even point. And you have schools across the district that are below 300. It's a fundamentally flawed process. We speak disparagingly of the CERNA board. I would hate that we'll be speaking disparagingly of the Cuneo board. Member Rodriguez, thank you for talking about active responses in your neighborhood and students walking safely. There's been no guarantee with the district that the busing that's driving CP Huntington and other places that were not closed in the past because the district wouldn't guarantee busing, that it's going to continue. There is no guarantee. I would ask, put it on the website, is the district going to guarantee busing for all students in the future? Member Hanson, I am very sorry that you have to listen to the public on some comments. I think you did a good job, and we all have free speech. But as the brother of a gay person and the father of a gay daughter, I urge you to consider, please don't continue this suppression. We're all using the courts now. It shouldn't be called a silly lawsuit, just like the community that you and my family belongs to, the Rainbow community, used the courts and changed things. So please at least extend respect and perhaps comment that your lawyers misspoke when they called it silly. Thank you.
Item 11.0, Board Workshop, Strategic Plan and Other Initiatives. Item 11.1, it's a budget workshop by Ken Forrest. It's an information item, 45-minute presentation, 30-minute discussion. Mr. Forrest.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Cummings. I'd like to start off, even before the presentation starts, by indicating that after going to the school service workshop on Tuesday and obtaining the latest information possible on the local control funding formula, and then utilizing some new tools from the Escape software company. We've been doing a review of the budget, and as a result, we are not able to provide you or the public with the detailed information we thought we would have available today. We will, of course, make every effort to get that detail out as soon as possible, and certainly in time for the August 1st board meeting when the budget revisions are being requested. We have a presentation tonight that should walk the board and the community through what is the latest information on LCFF. I'd like to point out that we are utilizing heavily School Service of California information. You'll notice that they are credited. Their banner is at the top of the slides that contain their information, and where we are giving you district unique information, you'll see the Sacramento City banner. So this is no news to anybody. This is just the latest update on exactly where funding is in relation to what was originally promised school districts. Now we have a little bit different view. School Services commissioned a study by Capital Matrix Consulting to determine the viability, if you will, of the Department of Finance projections for LCFF and state revenue. So you see a combined school service and Capital Matrix Consulting estimated revenue line, and below that you see Department of Finance. So you see it's slightly higher. Obviously, the LAO's numbers are actually above the yellow line. So we want to talk a little bit about risk and the measurement of risk. I won't spend a lot of time on this. This is the methodology that was utilized. They went through and did a standard deviation on each side of this projection. So you can take a look at this next chart and you can see that their projection, which is now the green line, and Department of Finance, which is the gold line, is well within one standard deviation. And so what this is really saying is that given no major changes to the economy, we can feel confident that perhaps the projections for continued increases in school funding will hold true. They have some conclusions which are very interesting, and we'll go through the detail on that. But basically, they're saying DOF numbers should be firm. We go through Prop 98 funding. Most everyone here is aware of the fact that the state does have an obligation to maintain a certain level of funding for K-12 education and some other educational units within the state. And you'll notice that this is one of the first years there have been no manipulations with regard to that calculation. It did go down slightly because of the lower general fund revenue estimates. So what does it look like? Prop 98 revenues, it's a constitutional guarantee. You can see where LCFF now takes the bulk, and then there are other programs which are contained within the Prop 98 spending from the state level. The state budget, as implemented, had some changes. We're giving you the update from our last and greatest information. You can see that some of the information has changed. We gave you this in a table form in our last presentation. So Prop 98 forecast, you can see it is continuing to go up. That's good news for schools. It went down slightly again due to the revenue change, revenue forecast change in the compromised budget. Now, Prop 98 and LCFF. Let's talk a little bit about one of the major differences. And unlike revenue limits, the previous funding formula, there is no guarantee in this law of an annual appropriation. So you'll see we're going to take some time to talk about multi-year projections and some of the difficulties which we will be encountering. The governor's policy and goals pretty much were achieved. And this gives you an outline of what it is that they've done to make sure those goals are obtained. Now, we have here the state provides a significant amount of LCFF growth in a given year. That's true. Just remember that previous slide, as long as they fund it. So this is our base year, and then we are given a target, and then we are using basically that target divided by 8, and that is what we are funded for this year. So what do our numbers look like? You can see that we have the base, the LCFF target, which is an 8-year. 8 years from now, we should be at 96.48 per pupil. The difference, and then the state factor is 12%. Basically, 12 times 8 is 96, so there'll be some minor adjustments there. So our increase is currently scheduled to be $334 per funded ADA. So you can see how this looks. Our total target of 96.48, we started at the base of 68.67, and this year's growth is $334. So there are two distinct phases. There is the 8-year implementation phase and then the fully funded phase. During the 8-year fully implementation phase, what they're basically acknowledging is there will be some districts who have inequities. We are not what's called a hold harmless district, so we're one of the districts that should see an increase each year as we go through. So, again, multi-year budgeting is going to present some challenges. The statutory COLA is no longer in statute. This gives us a challenge, and we are still required by AB 1200 to provide you and the county with multi-year projections, and we will be providing that next meeting. They're giving some cautions here, and that is the LCFF projections are assuming a very hefty percent increase in funding to education each year, roughly 6%. And here they're saying that over the last 20 years, 6 times during that 20-year period, the state not only didn't give an increase, they sometimes gave 0. So they're basically saying be careful, watch out, because you may come to a point where there's going to be no funding. You have to be able to sustain yourself. So let's talk a little bit about class size reduction and penalties. As you know, this district has negotiated alternate class sizes. Were it not for that, the district would have been, of course, severely penalized, and nor could we have fund these class size that are stated by the state as an objective. So where are your class sizes? Our negotiated class sizes at the present time are high, significantly higher, of course, than what the state would like to see, but that's a direct result of our ability to fund. So these are the limits we are currently held to, and of course, we're making every effort to ensure we're below these. So what does LCFF do? A little bit of information on this, but pretty much we'll see some equalization across the state after implementation, and then we'll see steady increases for districts in a more equitable manner. Now, there are a bunch of programs, as we indicated last time, that used to be categoricals, and they've now been rolled into LCFF. There are still categorical programs that have not been. It's important to realize that when they did that, they split the money and they put some in what's called the supplemental and some in concentration. And we'll get to that in a minute. So LCFF excluded programs that are outside, they still are categorical, and you can see what we have here. This is a picture of what's really been going on. You can see the top block are some of the excluded items separate from the formula, if you will, and then the other categorical programs which were rolled in. So LCFF concentration is $3 billion and the supplemental is $6 billion statewide. And they talk about what the weighting factors are, and then we're going to get to the accountability piece, which has yet to be defined. So it says in the yellow block, fully funding allocated through LCFF is largely unrestricted, but will be subject to comprehensive accountability requirements. Those requirements will not be issued until January 31st. The State Board of Education has until January 31st to issue those, and until March to actually implement them, there'll be a period of public comment. So in reality, we're going to be in March when we find out what the rules are. So from our perspective, we are attempting to divide up the budget into three categories: unrestricted, restricted, and what we're now calling accountable. And the accountable dollars are those from the LCFF, which we are required to track. They've not yet given us the rules for tracking it. They've just told us we're going to be required to track them. And we must track the dollars received for those students in the three categories. And the three categories are the English learners, the pupils eligible for free and reduced lunch meal program, and foster youth. It's an unduplicated count. They talk about how it's calculated. For the purposes of the 13-14 budget this fiscal year, we will be using our prior year ADA because we're a declining enrollment district. You'll note that going forward, we'll be using a moving average. So it's slightly different than the guarantee of you get to use the previous year if you're declining. So some of the other things, transportation and TIG funding continue as formula-based. And the one big difference, as you'll notice, they're frozen at the 12-13 level. There's no COLA applied to these. TIG funds can be used for any purpose. However, districts must expend no less on home-to-school transportation than the amount they expended in 12-13. And so we'll be tracking that. That's called maintenance of effort, and we'll be ensuring that we do that. Again, timeline for full implementation, the year 2021. So we have what our base grant numbers are, and then as you go through this formula, I won't waste a lot of time. There are two methods we have validated internally. Gerardo and his team have built a spreadsheet that to the dollar matches the school services spreadsheet, so we know exactly how it's being calculated. And so as we go through here, you can see the various factors are applied, and then they adjust the money and multiply it times the qualifying students. So on this slide, there's one number missing under 912. It does show up on the next page. Under the supplemental grant, there's actually another number. That's how it goes up. And the big thing on these numbers is you'll notice that you get a 50% concentration grant for the eligible students exceeding 55%. So when we go to the next page, or one of the subsequent pages, you'll see we're at 72%, so we get 17%. So this is how the calculation is done. If a person takes the time, they can take the numbers provided in this presentation, work through this math, and actually calculate what the district would receive. So here we have the actual numbers for our district, and you can see how it works out. K3, 9432, and then you can see 4678 and 912, and how that works. And so those are the numbers for this district, and that is the amount for 1314 as we go through. So on LCFF, how does it look? You have the base grant, you have the class size relief augmentation, then you have slight augmentation for 912, which they're calling CTE. So that money is for students in that category. Supplemental grant, concentration grant, transportation add-on, and TIG. Now, the hold harmless funding would be for those districts, any district who goes through this formula and the formula calculates out a number less than 1213, they get 1213 funding. We are not in that situation. We're going up $300+ per pupil. So here's a little bit different breakdown on LCFF for the district and what percent of our total money is related to the new categories. So here's LCFF. Our current funding was $277,758,567. Our target, 8 years from now, calculates out to be $390,274,789. Our increase to arrive at the target is $112,516,222. We're being told to utilize 12% of our projected increase will be the amount that we and every other district in the state will receive in 13-14. So you can see that that's $13,501 or $501,947 or $333.888. We, in the adopted budget, use $67 as our forecast. Therefore, additional funding per EDA is $66.80. Increase from 2013-14 adopted budget is $2,701,967. Additional funding increase as a percent is 4.861% on the state portion. I want to remind everybody that our total budget is greater than just the state. So that is the LCFF, but there are other things within the law. The Common Core state standards. As you know, the state has taken an extraordinary step of providing $1 billion statewide, and what our share of that is $8,089,800 is what we estimate our share to be. You can see we will receive 50% of the money in July of this year. We can encumber the funds and utilize the funds over only the next 2 school years. It is one-time money. So there are some expenditure rules. Professional development, major category. Notice they're tracking who attends the professional development. Instructional materials and supplemental instructional materials and technology. While $8 million sounds like a lot of money for the implementation of Common Core, we believe that the majority of the expenditures will be for instructional materials and professional development out of our Common Core funds, because we're lucky enough to have the bond to have already scheduled to attack the technology required. And so we're going to attempt to maximize these state dollars over the next 2 years for the implementation of Common Core. There is an expenditure reporting requirement. There is also a requirement that the plan be adopted publicly and have a public hearing on the plan. So the team is working now to build that plan and get it before the board so you can have a public hearing and then you may adopt it. And once adopted, then we can begin expenditures. Once the expenditures have occurred, we will be audited on how those expenditures occurred and did they meet the 3 expenditure guidelines. So the next steps are basically listed here. It's the same as I've just indicated. There are some websites here for people if they're interested to see the practice test and to see some existing professional development modules. Special education liability issues. They made a point of pointing out some of the large losses within the state when districts have failed to meet their obligations under special education. We are aware of these, and we are making sure as part of our monitoring of not only the budget, but some of the risk areas, that we're working hard to ensure that we're meeting the demands of our students from a human standpoint, but also from those related to legal. Adult education. This is an interesting program. These are their comments, that it's been jerked all over the planet. The May revision proposed maintaining the status quo. And so you've got the $30 million for 2-year planning. What has basically happened is that it looks like the state is attempting to change the method that adult education will be provided, and they're looking for school districts to have partnerships with community colleges or other institutions. So you'll see, if you read the law specifically, that that's in part of the legislation for people to take a look at. There is a maintenance of effort tied to adult education funding. The district is required to expend the same amount that it has spent before or equal to the amount of revenue we receive for adult education in the next 2 years. So again, that's what it basically says here. And you can see it's just telling us what some of the rules are. And it did catch many people off guard. We spoke about this earlier. We have a Medicaid Administrative Activities, referred to as MA, federal reimbursement issue going on in the state of California with regard to the federal government. And so this is from school services. There is a delay in the payment of this money, and they say you should expect a lower reimbursement. So it is all around how the data was collected for the claim submission. And so we are working to determine what we can do as a district so that in the future we may not be subject to these type of delays and or issues. Proposition 39, good news. You can see that they did allocate $381 million. And there are some very specific rules. Of course, we're in the more than 2,000 ADA. And you can see we received the per ADA allocation. And it talks about what the rules are and how the state is going to use or disperse, if you will, the Prop 39 money. So it also provides some additional rules related to how the money must be spent. So they're provided here. And more information will be forthcoming, I'm sure. State lottery, just a reminder, this is the amount that has been posted as the increase. And we want to point out that $156 per ADA is not really a whole lot of money. So it is obviously extra money for the district, and it is in our calculations. So multi-year projections. Back to these, required by law. It talks about what law requires it, AB 1200. But the difficulty, of course, is the revenue stream is no longer as guaranteed. So these are their recommendations with regard to multi-year funding. I highlighted the text on this slide. It's all their text. I highlighted it in red because there are some points here which I think need to be carefully reviewed. There's no longer a standard for revenue growth. It is not possible for us, for example, to compare to a comparable district without getting very deep into their statistics. Do they have the same number of free and reduced students? How many English learners do they have? So one check that was a sanity check, if you will, for multi-year projections has been removed. We no longer have that ability. So also, of course, there's no guarantee that the COLA will be funded. So we're going to have to be careful. We're going to provide you with our assumptions when we provide you with a multi-year projection. Another thing that is going to be a little bit more challenging is the level of demographic information that we will start to need to not only collect but maintain is more detailed. If we're going to be accurate in our forecast of LCFF formula, we're going to need a little more data. So we're investigating what methodology should be used to ensure we have that information. Reserves, I want to point out again, these reserve comments are from School Services of California, and they talk about revenue limit, deficit factor, COLA, and what the commitments are. There's no statutory calculation how much the state will contribute. So huge impacts for districts. They went into a long explanation of how districts that had large concentrations of free and reduced English learners and foster youth are higher risk than those who have no such population. Why? Because if the state does not fund, it has a bigger impact on those of us who are receiving more of the new money. So they're giving some recommendations. They talk about reserves, and they say no such thing as a good budget that does not have an adequate reserve. They talk about the revenue limits, the percent. Those percents are still in effect, even though they are reference the revenue limit. So It's the legal opinion so far that we still need the required 2% reserve. You can see they're stating categorically they think they're too low. And they've come up with what they believe are adequate reserves under this new funding formula. They're talking, they go through this, they talk about it. So what is it, all of this discussion, what reserve level do they recommend? Well, current estimates for our district would indicate that we should have, as per their recommendation, a separate line item reserve of $9 million. Well, that's great, but, you know, as per some of the comments this evening, it's going to take a long time before the district can move towards that type reserve. As we have discussed with the board, we have some other reserves we need to come up with first. We have our retiree health benefits we need to start funding. We have accrued vacation we need to start funding. So we'll be working with the board. We talked to the board earlier about bringing you a reserve recommendation policy that could be instituted over a number of years. We will now incorporate this as part of that policy. That is concludes the LCFF update. I have an update on the local control accountability program if the board wants to see it. It's your pleasure.
Should we take public comment first? Does anybody have a strong opinion? Let's do public comment.
We have 4 comments on 11.1 from Leo Bennett Koshan, Larry Tagg, Karen Sweat, and Grace Trujillo.
I could have the slide. Time could hold, please. Thank you. Leo Bennett Koshan. As you know, I'm a special guest. That means I also have memories. I've been at this board when it started in district elections. The previous board would never accept what we've accepted today. To wait for 72 slides to be given out at the board meeting, I'm sorry, I'm appalled. Only 8 of those are district slides. Everything else I know when I go and check, I'm going to find on the web because they're school services slides. We should have had this information so you could have the advantage of public input. And in the past, a board member would have told staff, don't do this to the board, don't do it to the public. The budget represents your priorities. You've heard all the needs that are out there. How can you do accountability getting this information so late? Trying the best I can with a limited time, I'm glad that we're moving away from the idea that this is maybe not coming. And I thank Gustavo for clarifying that at the last meeting, because now we're hearing the projections are solid. There's more upside than downside. We can count on them. I also point out school services was started by a Republican out of the Reagan administration. I'm trained in budget methodology. We always try to keep the money away from the services because that's our job. It's your job to figure out how to balance. So I hope you don't buy all their suggestions about reserves. But hey, good news. If you guys look and ask for information, we still have the notorious overpayment, you're not going to be able to see this, in books. You're projecting $20 million in books and supplies. You've never spent that much. Every year at audit, $10 million gets returned. You'll be told it's restricted money. Some of it is. You also make a $42 million contribution from unrestricted to restricted. So please educate discipline. Keep your eye on the ball, and the ball is not the staff. The ball is not the PowerPoint. The ball is what's turned in to the state of California. One last piece.
We could finish up, please.
I'm glad we're no longer relating on EdPoint data, because I talked to Ed Data, and they weren't happy that their particular logo was being used. And perhaps you need to hold staff accountable. Look at all the corrections I had to make when I did check the data. You guys are not getting good information. You can't lead us if you're blind. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Forrest, as long as you're here, and I'm a little upset, and I apologize, here are 3 pages of questions I emailed you.
If you could
in
just
the past,
if you could
the board
direct
would
everything
ask
to us,
people, okay, I would like it shown in the record that
is up,
I am
Mr.
getting no answers from your public service. In the past, questions were responded to within 2 to 3 days. In the past,
Your
if
time
I
is up.
brought minutes,
Your time
questions
is
to
up.
the meeting, that was
Your time is
respected.
up.
President Cunha, if I give you these questions, will you see that
Your
they're
time
answered?
is up, Mr. Baxter.
President Cunha, I emailed you. Why are we having a $6 million deficit for 12-13? You started with
We have
$1
other
million
people who want
one.
to speak. Please allow them to speak.
Perhaps you could answer that one question. Thank you for your time.
President Cuneo, Dr. Cummings, and board members. Given the significant improvement in the per pupils funding, thanks to the passage of the state budget, the new K through 12 local control financing formula, I suggest that it's time for you, as SCUSD trustees, to insist that the adopted 2013-2014 budget be modified according to the LCFF information that is by now well known to district officials. The doom and gloom budgeting that you have presided over for the past few months has been frustrating to watch and is eroding the confidence of the community you serve as students, families, and district employees continue to experience uncertainty and absorb painful cuts like school closures. Voters approved Proposition 30 to provide new money for schools in November. You have had LCFF projections as early as February from the Department of Finance, April from the Department of Education. Finally, as of this week, you have had School Services of California confirm approximately $12 million in new funding, LCFF funding beginning next year. The fact that tonight the community still does not have clear indication from the district about modifications to the adopted budget that reflect the new money is troubling and deserves an explanation. What is clear is that there is no structural deficit, nor will there be one in the foreseeable future. Please insist that district officers explain why they are still publicly propagating this doom and gloom scenario with millions of new dollars coming to the district thanks to the voters, the legislature, and the governor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. Again, my name is Karen Sweat. Well, I too am wondering why there was time to do a 71-page PowerPoint presentation when there didn't seem to be time to do 8 modifications to a 9-page budget. And I'm going to expand on the 6 pages of MYP multi-year projection. So I'm going to give you just one other thing. If indeed you start looking at the budgets instead of the PowerPoints, here's the kind of thing that you'll see and learn and know. We have on our budget this year, and this may or may not change once we get around to doing the modifications, we have in the 6,000s, I'm going to let you look that up, we have a current budget of projected for $249,000. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of information. In 11-12, we had an adopted budget in the 6,000s of $233,000. And when you look at the actuals, when you trend this out and you pay attention to what's really going on, we actually spent $3,877,000 plus a little change in 10-11. The year before that, we had a adopted budget of $236,890. The unaudited actuals show that we really spent $2,342,000 and some change. So what we have done, those of us who are looking at the budgets, we kind of, turn this into confetti. Again, everybody who's following the budget has been reading about LCFF. This stuff on school services and FCMAT and EdSource is really valuable, and I'm glad that we've got this, and it's nice to have it all read to us. Maybe it sinks in a little bit more. But we need to be looking at the district budget. It is easy to read, and we need to focus on this, not on these grand, larger concepts associated with LCFF. We need to be paying attention to the budget.
Thank you.
I'm giving this back to you.
President Cunha, we do have another comment after Ms. Trujillo who wanted to yield her time to Ms. Trujillo.
Can we do 4 minutes?
Okay. Good evening, members of the board.
We do 4.
4 minutes.
We'll get, sorry. It's okay. We threw you a curveball here. Okay, very good.
Okay. Good evening, board members. And I'm Terry Cunning. One of the things that I wanted to talk to, it's very important that we look at different things in a budget. You usually analyze the projections, you analyze what happened and what has happened in the past. And I think right now we need to focus on some of the things that I have concerns about. The goals and objectives of the funds in the areas of the new money coming in, as well as the restricted and unrestricted. The restricted funds were unspent for the last 3 years. That's a lot of money that's not being spent. Also, the district may justify large reserves. Why would you do that? Also, the large reserves questions need to be answered to the districts. Why is their restricted funds being used to pay for restricted funds expenses? If we're doing that now, what's going to happen when we get the new funding formula money? And who's overseeing it? What happens if that happens? Does anybody get slapped in the hand for doing it? You know, those are the questions I ask. You know, it's taxpayers' money, it's all our money. We're asking why schools are failing. These are some of the reasons. Another question that I asked the board these questions because I want you guys to think. You guys are in the position to make change, to help, to find strategies to implement and improve our school systems. And at the same time, when you're making decisions and thinking, you know what, I need to ask these questions before I make a major decision that's going to impact a child's life forever. The focus and the issues that make the new funding formula as part of the discussion is the evidence that allows in court that I've been attending the courts, and one of the things that they disallowed was the fact of the financial expert. You have to have degrees and you have to have all this to be an expert in that. But sometimes you don't. All you need is common sense and people to have an understanding, because that's how decisions are made. I know we had a presentation. It was wonderful, by the way. It's 75 pages, but it talked about a lot of stuff, but not the things that needed to be discussed on. And that's the key thing to focus on, making projections. If you're making projections, you could be making them at different stages as the month or years go on. For example, if you know, I went back and looked at some of it, it's like, why weren't some cuts done in January so there wouldn't be a deficit? And supposedly a deficit, at least a paper deficit. You know, there's way to manipulate and play with the things. I ask questions to the board members. Have you taken the time and understanding some of these numbers and how it impacts one decision to another? For example, I know one thing that for me it hits home is construction, the bond. Phoebe Hearst's bathrooms are not working. You know, my son doesn't go to the restroom because they're broken and they don't work, they don't function. They don't have a computer lab because it's a magnet school, so there's no funding for that. The bond money could have been used for those, for us to have a computer room, for us to have fixed bathrooms, but it's being used to modify $20 million for the receiving schools. That's a major impact. I could turn blue, and it could be used for other schools as well. If best practices would have been used, there would have been no reason to do these modifications because the due process was done, and it wasn't like a given. So again, my child's having difficult, along with all the Phoebe Hearst kids, the restrooms are not working because the bond money is being utilized to accommodate for the school closures. Thank you.
Thank you. Do board members have any opinions about doing the local control accountability program? Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is that what people want to do? Okay, that sounds good.
As part of LCFF, this is the part that the State Board of Education will be developing rules for. But as we go through, you'll see that there are some changes from what we have presented previously. But they are saying that they're going to have an accountability system, and they've punted, if you will, the football over to the State Board of Ed. And so hopefully we will have some input as we go through as to how the dollars will be able to be tracked as we go through the system. So as you may recall, in the May revision, it looked like local control was tilting in favor of the state, and the compromise bill basically levels that out. So you will have more discretion as part of the local control. The proportionality has been relaxed, and that's important because that will allow the district to make decisions as to how to best serve students a little more easily than had it been very strict. And the other key point is the maintenance of effort requirements have been dropped on many of the categoricals. That really does allow the district to more appropriately redirect the funds. So as you can see, the state priorities are very specific, but they're broad, and we'll show you some of those. The State Board of Education has been tasked, and then the Superintendent of Public Instruction will continue to have the academic oversight. So it gives a then and now. So annual goals and specific actions will be required, and it's as yet determined as to how those goals will be satisfied and what actions may be required. And so you adopt this for 3 years. It's everyone's belief that this may be incorporated into other plans that the district is required to utilize so that the district can have one comprehensive plan that meets all of the requirements. And you can see that you have county and state superintendent oversight, and they give you the specifics down below. There is an approval that must be granted by the local. It goes through the county office, and then those plans must be posted on the website. The State Board of Education will have a template. And as you can see, the county will be the conduit through which the Superintendent of Public Instruction will approve or disapprove plans. They're going to explicitly state what their priorities are, and then it'll be up to the district plans to ensure that those priorities are addressed. So on or before July 1 of 2014 and every 3 years thereafter, the board will have to adopt the local control accountability program, and we'll have to do so in a manner that meets the template requirements from the State Board of Education. So it will include these significant areas, the state priorities of numerically significant subgroups. And you can see it says 30 students with valid test scores, et cetera, et cetera. And so they are actually defining down to what level we must account for the accountability, if you will, to show that we are making improvements in these areas. So we have to see, as you see, it's not only district-wide actions, but actions by school site. And each fiscal year, we will have to update the plan, and as part of the budget, the board will be required to adopt that. And we have to show specifically how we will be serving the unduplicated student count. So again, you can see there are 8 areas that have been identified. Basic conditions for student achievement. You can see that these are pretty much in line with some of the Williams Act requirements. Pupil outcomes, parental involvement, pupil engagement, the school climate. And then 2 additional priorities have been assigned for county offices of eds. So they're going to be looking at exactly how I think the districts are handling these 2 categories. So accountability, this is what we're somewhat unsure of. This is what we mentioned a few minutes ago. We're going to attempt to create what we're calling, for lack of a better term, until the state classifies it, these will be accountable funds. Those funds are the supplemental and concentration grant funding that must be spent in a manner to support the students generating the funds. And then they've relaxed the proportionality rules, but you still must do so in proportion to the number of students at each site. So, and then you can see where it says we may not spend less, so there is a maintenance of effort in this area. So they're going to be looking to see if the extra money they've given us is being utilized to support the students who generated the extra money. And then you can see some of the regulations. The main one is the bottom bullet where they say they're going to attempt to make the regulations no more stringent than the Title I requirements, as listed in the No Child Left Behind Act. And as you know, maintenance of effort is mentioned in that act as well, and so the state is following through on that. So, adopting and updating, you can see they did cross off some of this, but consultation with teachers, principals, school personnel, and pupils. And then it goes on to say present for review and comment to the Parent Advisory Committee, your English Learner Parent Advisory Committee, and then the superintendent must respond in writing to comments received. Opportunity for public input, and then again, superintendent must respond in writing to comments received. And it is our understanding that under the state board rules, they will be indicating exactly what respond in writing means, whether or not you can do that by posting on a website or whether it has to be truly in writing. And then adoption of the plan, we must submit it to the County Office of Education, and we have to post it on the district website, or the County Office of Education must post it on theirs with a link to ours, and you can see how they're trying to make sure these are transparent. So, and then they talk about the oversight responsibilities. So this year is a pass. This is the year we're supposed to be developing the plan, and obviously we can start, and then in January when we see the first view of the rules, we'll have a better idea, and then in March we'll have much more of an idea of what we need to do. So you can see what happens. Short timeline from March, when the final rules are supposed to come out, till July 1, the district must make sure its plan conforms to the requirements. Oversight responsibilities, you can see it talks about when a district fails, but notice that that's 1 year later. So 15-16. They'll start to impose restrictions if the district is unsuccessful in demonstrating that it utilized the funds according to the rules and that it did make, or at least was able to track sufficiently and show progress in assisting these students. So we have adopting the budget standards by 1/1/14, it's the state board. 131, adopt the spending regulations. 331, adopt the LCAP templates. And then technical assistance and intervention. So it's not till October of 2015 that we will actually see the evaluation criteria upon which we will be graded. And so we'll be, hopefully, if we're in conformance with all of the templates and the plans, then when the rubric comes out, we will only have minor modifications, if any. And that ends my presentation tonight. Questions?
Thank you. Do we have questions or comments by any member of the board? Anybody? Member Rodriguez? Glenn, you go first.
I'm just going to ask a few questions, and then I'm going to let everyone else ask after. So I want to revisit slide 6, since I was getting myself a cup of tea. I did try to catch your presentation from the back room when you were talking about standard deviations. I got a little excited. I'm like, ooh, statistics. But in reading, I don't know what these two blue lines are supposed to represent. So if you can just kind of review that for me.
So one standard deviation is just a statistical. If you go back one more slide, it talks about the normal variables, what plus or minus 1. Standard deviation, the last bullet, it's 1/6 chance the revenues will fall below or above that blue line. And so what they're saying is 1/6, roughly 16%. There's only a 16% chance that these lines are going to go outside or go below, and a 16% chance they'll go above. So since the lines appear to be very consistent, the only hesitation is we're dealing with an economic forecast that has lots of variables. So we didn't waste your time showing you some of the UCLA data, et cetera, that talked about the economy and how things are improving in California. But I believe that we think, along with others, that the Department of Finance forecast is very conservative. We are hopeful that the state will continue to fund LCFF at the levels they are predicting. That would be 6% a year. That's hefty. As was indicated in the one slide, they've not been successful in doing that over the last 20 years. So we'll have to take a look. We'll go year by year. And obviously, the more revenue the district has, the greater ability it has to serve the students.
Thank you. So going back to the slide, it's a plus or minus 1 standard deviation from which? The DOF or the SSC or the CMC?
The SSC, CM, and CMC.
So just off of the estimate
Off the green line.
of an independent source.
Independent source. Mm-hmm.
So
however, he's not a whole lot independent. He worked for the Department of Finance for 15 years or something. So he's a consultant now, but he did work for DOF for a number of years.
I think the point of this graph was that the state budget has good legs. You have 4 chairs, has good legs, not as past years, which depends on the passage of Proposition 30, on the sale of Facebook. What they're saying is that you can rely that at least we will not have, based on what we know at this point in time, we will not have like mid-year budgets, mid-year cuts, that's what happens in the private years. I think that's their point about this. And they are doing this new because now we don't have a COLA, so they're kind of saying how good is the Department of Finance numbers. So at least they are below than what the School State of California is projecting. So they're saying at least for 13, 14, you have a good budget. You're not going to have. I think that's their main point of this graph.
Yeah, just to, they're trying to make everybody feel better about losing those guarantees.
So I beg to differ. I think that this board needs to hear more of the forecasting elements that take into place. Real estate, birth rates, COI, or the Consumer Price Index, CPI. We need to understand that information and how it affects our budget. I wish you would have decided to bring all of that information in, more specifically localized numbers and how our local real estate market is going, how our job market is going, because all of that affects our local tax dollars just the same, and we get local funding as well as state and federal funding. So we need to understand the whole gamut of what goes into forecasting. So I would have liked to have seen that. And then the board would be enlightened that much more. I've got a lot of questions about this multi-year budgeting, and it does sound like it's more important under the local control funding formula. So what elements then are you proposing at this point in time? I know that you're going to have a lot more work ahead of you, but what are you going to anchor down in some of these for your in use of your formula for the local control funding?
Well, the first thing we have to do is identify the revenue sources independently. And we are going to have to, because we received no guidance from the Department of Education, who is actually the owner of SACS, the Standardized Chart of Accounts. I'll give you an editorial comment. I find it difficult to believe that they can't come up with a 4-digit number. I mean, anyway, so we'll come up with our own, is what it amounts to, and we'll track it, and then we'll have double the work because they'll probably come up with a different number, and we're going to have to make journal entries so that we can report. So that's our goal. As I indicated previously, we have some major work to do to turn the budget around to meet both management and public demands on how the budget looks and what you can look at. And I'm hopeful we can get that done by the end of first quarter. But this is just one more piece to the puzzle. We have to create new resource codes, and that resource has to follow those students. So to one of your points, we are investigating what type of demographic information we should start to be collecting and whether or not we should be looking at a separate service and or software which would allow us to do that more accurately year in, year out, and provide that data.
One more question on this is, we seem to be very reliant upon local control funding instead of looking at ways that the district can be in the business of generating revenue. I know that we're in the business of spending for specialized programs that may or may not return our investment on our dollar. But what efforts are we making in looking at concentrating on generating our revenue, meaning attracting more, families to the area, or, for that fact, partnerships with our community?
Yeah, I mean, we are investigating those. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I had a discussion with the superintendent I just left in Alaska about a program they have as to whether I want to present it to the two doctors. And I was asking just how successful that was in drawing students in. While I was there, it was very successful in that environment in drawing in families who had been disenfranchised, if you will, with public education. The school became the largest school in the district, and it was it's a model that I think is worth looking at. I was attempting to obtain information so I could provide it to them because it is a model that does exactly what you're asking. How do you bring students into your school district? And this, it not only brought students in, but it also had a great graduation rate and good achievement scores. And so it's really it's a different model. And Dr. Paramo has agreed to send me some information. The principal of that school is on vacation, and he will be sending me more information, which I'm going to provide to them. You have some similar programs in this district, but they're not coordinated into one location. So it's something I think they can look at, and it may be successful. It's a different environment here. So we are looking at that. I know the whole district is, because that is, to quote my economics professor, competition is the spice of life, and I like to win.
Statement. What other ways are there potentials for school districts to raise revenue? I mean, students is always the go-to solution, but I know that there has to be other ways for when economic times are tough. And right now, I think this is something that we should be looking at as a district. It doesn't seem like LCFF is going to be the magic pill that's going to solve any budget problems. So it looks like we have to be more creative as a board, as a district, to look at other revenue generation sources. So what other things have you experienced?
Well, we have, in my previous districts, we have provided services to other districts and charged for those services at a profit. The IRS limits what governmental agencies may compete in, but you are, so far, you are able to provide services to other governmental entities and make money. And so we did it in a couple different situations. We've provided food service, warehousing, transportation, IT services, and in one case, this was kind of strange, but counseling services, which I didn't quite understand, but the other districts seemed to want the service. So we'll look at those. I have to be honest with you, we need to fix our own systems first before we can look at offering our services to someone else. But there are other districts around us, many districts, in addition to the insurance. I'm sure you know we're in a joint insurance pool, but there are other ways to combine services. I've had a joint warehouse system before, and I have had joint interagency grounds maintenance systems that did save money.
Thank you with that. And I don't require a response on this, but the district does hold a patent for something, and I'd like to see something.
I can respond to that. We just recently renewed the patent, and we have charged an individual to move forth with determining how that patent can be turned into an ongoing revenue stream.
I don't know if you saw my excitement over here about a separate reserve fund, because it was one of the questions that I had. And when you said it, I was like, he answered my question. So just want to thank you for that. Now, the accountability side. I was just looking at the State Board of Education members, a talented group that we have as our State Board of Education members. I got through maybe 3/4 of them. Not one of them has been a school district board member. And so what I'd like to tell my colleagues is that in order to inform their process, we need to be in front of them and talking to them about what life is like on a school district board, because we know that people, if they haven't sat here, they don't know what we go through. They don't know the life at this seat. And so it's our obligation to get in front of them, talk to them, schedule meetings with them so that we can talk about what life is like in our seat. And if anyone out there is watching that's a board member from any other district, I encourage them to also do that because it looks like nobody on that board has the level of experience that we're dealing with right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Kennedy.
Yeah, my question isn't necessarily about this specifically, but a lot was talked earlier about public participation and all of that. So my question might be to you, Mr. President, or to the acting superintendent. We got this tonight. There's still a lot of stuff out there that's coming, and it's moving target time. What is the process for the board and the public participation in the budget in the coming weeks?
I mean, I can answer this, and then Mr. Forrest can follow up. But we will be engaging. First, we bring back the information on August 1st. We'll also do some community workshops as well in August, and we'll be engaging before August 1st with our bargaining units to get ideas as well.
What is it that takes place on August 1st then, just to be clear?
On August 1st, we'll be presenting the Board of Education with the revised budget recommendations. That's in accordance with the 45-day revision requirement. And then you would be revising the budget, which would then become the official spending plan for the district for the remainder of the year. We're going to be coming back to the board more often than perhaps you're used to in the budget process moving forward with more updates. And as Dr. Cummings has mentioned, we're going to be setting up a calendar where we have public meetings on the budget and where we have hopefully the board will have time for more work sessions that will be truly more oriented to work sessions around detail. We do have every expectation of being able to provide the board with some of the detail, which was mentioned tonight, in an electronic format, and post that same detail on the web. We currently have under construction, if you will, roughly a dozen mini PowerPoint presentations that will go on the web that will attempt to explain various parts of the budget. And then we'll post that detail also, and it is our goal by the end of third quarter that monthly detailed reports will be provided and posted.
Thank you for that. That's exactly what I wanted to hear about. I mean, I think that some of the criticism is unwarranted toward you and your staff. I think that we are moving in the direction that is exactly what the public's asking for. These things take a little bit of time, and I thank you for that openness.
Member Hanson.
Wanted to follow up a little bit because I understand you'll be coming back to the board on a more regular basis as the budget numbers become more clear and as more information happens. I mean, I'm still obviously fairly new at the board, and I'm surprised at the complexity of the budget and seeing first interim budget, second interim. There's a whole lot of different updates that we receive as this moves. It's like no budgeting I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've been involved in some different organizations, but nothing as complex as this. But I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that then the goal, your goal, if you're going to be bringing us budget updates on a monthly basis or however often that happens, I assume that there's ability to adjust the budget as the numbers determine if we need to make changes up or down. Is that something that can happen?
Yes, sir, it is. And you're also going to be seeing a change in your budget. You are ratifying budget revisions now, and we're going to be changing the format of that as we can get the budget more orderly within the computer system. You'll see those revisions in two categories. The first category, the board will be looking at any revision which causes a total fund budget to go up or down. So a total authorization to go up or down will be in one category. And you'll see that something has occurred to cause it to go up or down. Hopefully, it's going up because we've received revenue. And we can report that to you. An example would be you're going to see a revision that takes $1,320,000 out of the budget because of the Medicaid delayed payment situation. Wouldn't it be great to be able to come back to the board 4 months from now and say the federal government in California have come to an agreement and they're going to fund us retroactively at that same level? We would come to you with a budget revision. The second level of revisions you will see are more what I say might be called routine. No changes in overall fund balance. We hope to be able to give budget managers the ability to move within their discretionary funds, their own transfers, in which case we would just be reporting that to you because their total bottom line would not change. So it's just movement of money, and the same thing occurs, as you heard indicated, and you have also spoken to how difficult it is in California between restricted and unrestricted. They give you the money in unrestricted. They cause you to move it to restricted. In some cases, they give it to you in restricted. You're allowed to move it to unrestricted. And so those types of things. And so there may still be a third category. But I want to break down the budget revisions so they're more clear. And the board truly is seeing what it is you are ratifying.
I also appreciate the fact that as you're moving items onto the web and making it available electronically, so everyone who's interested in the budget, the folks that are here and the people that are watching, that are participating, and the PTAs and the other groups that are involved have the ability to help educate themselves about it, and then in return they can educate us about it. We really do have to rely on not just you as the staff, but also rely on the public and the people that are engaged to help us let us know, what their priorities are to help us, make the best decision. So I would hope that this is educational for the folks that are very concerned about the budget, who are talking about it all this evening, that it changes all the time. Changes can be made all the time, and nothing is set in stone. So while it's frustrating that we might not have as much information at this meeting as we were hoping to have, there's another meeting in 2 more weeks, and there'll be another meeting 2 weeks after that, and 2 weeks after that, and 2 weeks after that, and we can make changes as we go. That no determination is final, so we can help hopefully make people a little more calm in their remarks and presentation and concern about us veering off course, because we really can't get that far off course. So I also noted, just looking in our budget documents, about attendance days in the K-6 looked like they were down about 2.5% this year versus the same last year. That's a significant drop, and that's just in 1 year. So I know there's still a little bit of complexity of people understanding about school closures. I mean, that's one more, to me, evidence of why school closures happened. I know, some folks were asking about the cost of the lawsuit. I understand we're probably in excess of $25,000 on our side. We don't have the ability to stop the lawsuit. Only the folks who filed it do, and they probably don't feel any of that financial pain. Only we do, and only the students we serve do. So if people are interested in seeing the lawsuit stopped, that they shouldn't be talking to us about that. But I do appreciate the time that you're doing here, and I also understood that the budget document that you're looking at posting is going to be quite a large document.
Yes, sir.
I think I heard something like 1,400 pages.
Yes.
So there'll just be oodles of information for all those folks who enjoy doing that, so you can really have a full look at that and really help educate all of us too, because that's a whole lot of information. But I appreciate you keeping us updated, and particularly the public comment periods, because it's hard to have the interaction that I think the public would like at these meetings, at a board meeting. And really, if we do it in a public forum where all of us can ask questions and have a back and forth, that's going to be a lot more productive. So I look forward to hearing those dates and look forward to participating myself. So thank you.
Member Arroyo.
Thank you, President Cunha. So have a couple of questions that came up as some questions were being raised, and you were talking about as the updates become more frequent, and then as Board Member Hansen mentioned, revise up or down, or the things that you mentioned. What does this mean to in regards to the stability of the finances of the district? I mean, as far as I understood, we would approve the budget, and once it was approved, and that was the spending plan for the rest of the year. That was it, basically, right? I mean, the only thing that changed were the different federal or whatever grants that would be dropped into the funds as they came through the year, right? Does this mean this becomes a process less stable in projecting, or how are we spending our money?
Actually, the opposite.
Explain that, basically, and what
right.
that really means.
My goal is to put the spending plan in concrete, if you will, once the board adopts the final revision based on, and only allow changes because subsequent revenue has been received. And even that, we're going to move, as I mentioned in the last meeting, we're going to move to forecasting that revenue also. So in the 14-15 budget, you're going to see the total budget, and you're going to see a forecast for those anticipated federal and local dollars in the budget. So we'll only come to you if one of those forecasts is way off. That's what it amounts to.
Okay.
And I'll give you my background as to why I believe that's important. In some states, once you adopt the budget, it's illegal to change it. And so those states have put in statute what they believe is a best business practice. And it's exactly what you referred to. A stable spending plan is generally in the interest of a government or a business. That way you can use that to work towards your goals. So it is my stated intention to move to a more stable funding plan that has fewer modifications throughout the year.
So just as a follow-up to that, and either it's a request or question, because I don't know if it requires board action or not, but if it becomes a model that needs to be in place, it would be good to have it either set in regulation or in policy so that we don't lose that methodology. I mean, let's say it works and it works wonderfully, and the change of positions happens, you get a better job, move somewhere else, or decide, it's your time to move on, that then we have continuity. And I think that whatever we can do to document it or actually set it in place will be very good. Now, in terms of the revisions, are these, is this something that you can tell us that these are items that will come to the board on open session, or are these going to be put into the consent agenda and then never? I mean, we're talking about it and it makes great sense, but later on we start seeing that things are just getting put on the consent agenda.
Right. I would, my preference, it obviously is the board's discretion. My preference is any change in a fund balance total is through the normal, what we might call two-step process, reading, adoption. And so truly you're seeing it twice before you vote. You see it once, and then you vote on it the next meeting. The ratifications of no change in total balance, I would think the board would like to just continue to have on consent because they have no impact on the budget. They're just a requirement for you to ratify that the change was made. So if I'm a high school principal and I move my money from supplies to services, that's truly a budget revision, and we would want you to know that occurred and you would see it, but it really has no impact either on that high school's total availability of funds or on the overall budget.
Okay, and as long as I can, remind President currently and future members to actually stay to the effort to see these items come up on the agenda, because many times it's great ideas that we discuss and then later on we just start seeing them buried in the consent agendas. So those were my two comments for the prior questioning. I have one main item that I wanted to ask about, and this has to do with the Local Control Accountability Plan, the LCAP. The essence of it, as I understand it, as the governor really shifted how he funded education and then gave a different way of giving money to the school districts, this methodology of accountability also shifts not only the funding but also the controls, right? And therefore the need to have this plan in order to ensure that there's accountability measures that were there with the categorical funding sources, had some accountability there. Those are removed. We get a bigger chunk of money, and this is our way as a district to prove that we are living up to the expectations. So in terms of that, my biggest concern is that for expediency purposes, we might opt to move too fast and not include enough of the partners in the community. It's easy, and many times because we think that they are obstructing or they have different priorities or it's just cumbersome. And the real challenge, and I will say that to you, to the superintendent, the acting superintendent, and the rest of the board, that my biggest concern is that we will decide to act in too much of an administrative fashion that we completely block out partners. And my very specific question is, how do you recommend we have better communication and sharing of information with our interested partners in the community? Some of them who are sitting here this evening, and regardless if we agree with Mr. Cauchon, regardless if we agree with anyone in this audience, they do have an interest to be part of the process. And so how do we address that? Not because it's just a feel-good recommendation as much as the governor's proposal in shifting those dollars into the state also is putting the onus on us to have more involvement with the community. So I really want to make sure that this is a statement that is not just a wish as much as hearing back from the administration and from yourself, how are we really going to have better communication? Regardless if we disagree on the priorities, regardless if we disagree on the process, have that clarity of communication.
Right. Well, I agree with you. It's very clearly outlined already that the meetings with responses to questions is a requirement. I think in addition, we've spoken to the board about the fact that our student information system is being replaced. This is a great opportunity for us as we install a new student information system to ensure that everyone has the appropriate access to the information so that we are fully accountable. So let me give you an example. Obviously, parents will have access to data through the parent portal once it is implemented. But in addition to that,
what information would be available specifically through that portal?
The performance of their individual student on the parent portal for all of their assessments. So they would be able to look at that. One of the questions, for example, we're asking the vendors during the demonstrations is, does their product offer translation of screens, of websites, so that we can address those members of our community who may have a second language issue? So that's one of the questions. The next issue is you move on to the next step, and that is publishing the data in real time of your test results after it's been released, because the way the test results go, the students take the test and then it goes to the state, and then there's an opportunity for review, and then once it's been, I'm not sure what term is used in this state, but unquarantined, for lack of a better term, once that data is released, then it can be posted. So I'm used to having direct links on district websites to the aggregated data. And it depends, you can only disaggregate, go down to a certain number, and then you're not allowed to go any lower. And you want to protect the identity of the students. So the aggregated data by school, much as it is out, on ed data, et cetera, that data, part of this new system is required to provide that data. And so we're going to see that demonstrated, and we're going to implement that over the next couple of years. So that is true accountability when that data is on the web by student for the parents. There is also a student portal, so kids have access to certain things. Parent portal, schools, individual schools, and then it depends on how the district decides to further aggregate the data. Obviously district-wide, but sometimes there are other breakouts. I've worked some fairly large districts, so they break out the regions.
Okay. In terms of finance information, how is this system going to allow this information? And let me get to the point, and I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. The fact that some of the members of the audience have some observations about the budget, right? You may disagree with them, and you may think they are off base. The bottom line is that as we adjourn this meeting tonight, they will leave this room with the same questions that they walked in this evening. And so what I'm left with is, these are members of the community that are obviously very interested in what's going on in the district. I don't think that they necessarily have an ill intent in the district. They want to understand it, and they want to help us understand it, right? The fact that there's misunderstanding is leaving me wondering how good of a job we're doing as a board or as a district, not only to communicate, but also answer those questions. I mean, I get it. We have limited time, and what is it that we can answer? But obviously, there's a level of misunderstanding or miscommunication, at least from the position that you're at, right? And all I'm trying to get at is we're trying to address the LCAP and move into a more district level accountability. If we have this gap of understanding or misunderstanding, we have to do something about it somehow, right? And that's what I'm trying to get at. And so any ideas will be very helpful as to how we...
We will be publishing comprehensive data and summary data, financial data, more quickly than the student data because the system is in place. What we're working with the vendor is to get it so that that is accurate and can be done in a timely manner. And so they have certain reports which are pretty good. They provide some data. We want to make sure they're secure, and then that data will be provided and updated once a month. I have to let the board know that the reason I'm saying it's not going to happen to the end of the quarter is that it isn't just about providing the data. We have some accounting processes currently in place, which means the data that's in there is not current. So we have to first change the business process as to how transactions are processed so that that information is current at the time we publish the report. So let me give you an example.
Okay.
In this district, it has been our practice to be as accurate as possible and only charge the indirect charges to our grants and categorical programs at the end of the fiscal year. That does not allow the general fund to show that credit, nor does it allow the grant to show the expenditure. It only happens after the year is closed. So that is not the practice that I prescribe to. Mr. Castillo and his whole team has been put on notice that practice will change.
But doesn't a budget show the approved number encumbered, which means it's money that will be charged to the account, not yet charged, and then ultimately shows the fund balance,
Only if
right?
there's a requisition and a purchase order. These are done with journal entries. And so that those transactions do not occur until made.
Oh, okay.
But I also think, Mr. Royo, I think your question is the state kind of tell us the plan for LCAP. Tell us you first have to consult with teachers, principals, schools, and personnel. Then you need to go to the parent advisory committee, the English learners. Then the superintendent must respond to questions. Then there's an opportunity for the public. I think that was, so I think it's now we have a guide where before we had a advisory committee and what goes first, what goes second. I think on the slide 68, I mean, that's kind of let us know for all the school districts, at least the state hasn't developed this or what is the requirements that we need to do here yet, but they're at least telling us this is what you must do. So there's an involvement for the whole district. So at least they will have opportunity. So we cannot go to you if we don't have teachers and principals input yet. So that's how we understand it. That's how School Services of California presented. So that's, I think that will answer some. It was something that will be a little different than we have happened for. That's a new law. That's how I understand it that we need to do. So we can, when we come to you, we already, the parents already get their input, the advisory committee, and we answer some questions. That's how so that has to be aligned with the budget, both of them.
So one of the things that we've not had the capability to do and will have with the new student system or business intelligence system, depending on where we end up, for good comparison, you should have per student data. So how much did you give supplies and materials per student in this school versus this school? Now, to keep us out of trouble with the federal government, right, it's supposed to be the same, except when you get a Title I edition, and then we show that. And so I think we can move to that, and then those become public. So what happens is that everyone sees the distribution by pupil. For example, we have metrics from the Council of Great City Schools that compares certain things by pupil. We now need to be able to merge our data to say, whoa, wait a minute, we're not doing that good a job here. If the average expenditure, for example, for a custodian in a 500-student elementary school is X amount per pupil, and we're spending X plus $10, why would that be? We would need to look at what's the problem. Could be the building's 110 years old. So, there are things like that we'll be able to evaluate. It will make us more accountable. We'll be able to see how the expenditures are flowing, not only by district, but by pupil. And not individual pupil, the per pupil expenditure. So that is the objective, and we will be moving towards that over a series of months and years, because some of these systems just aren't here yet. So we will be listening, as Gerardo has indicated, to the public. We want to hear what they say. I hear what the public is saying here. We're attempting to get them the information they need. It's just not quite as easy. I will be very honest with you. I provided information to both Dr. Roberts and Dr. Cummings, and in a report, and what do you know, the report did not balance. Now, it should have. Came right out of the system, but when we looked at it and ran a second report, which did balance to the total budget, it was off. And so it isn't just a matter of going and pressing a button and watching the report drop out of the machine. Because it's new and because we're just learning about this, we have to validate the numbers. We have to make these changes in business processes, which will allow the numbers to be current and accurate. And then, to Mr. Hansen's comment, we need to simplify the way we have put the budget together. It's too complicated. The County Office of Education, CBO at a meeting, was that Tuesday? Even she said it's too complicated. Her own budget. So, and hers is not as bad as this. So we're going to calm this down a little.
And I totally get it. I mean, and it's an issue between the needs of having a solid accounting system for the purpose of having a good accounting system, and then the second challenge is how do you make it easy for people to read, right? And so I don't have the answers. The only thing I would ask and plead the board to, as we move forward, to just keep in mind that we have a new methodology that we're going to be getting the money, and with that methodology comes an even greater responsibility to be more inclusive of the community. So don't have the answers tonight. I didn't expect, obviously, to have them all, but at least to keep in mind that that's the path that we, at least that I will be asking about. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you. Again, just a clarification on what you had answered to Member Arroyo. So if it's a budget change, it'll go through the two-step process. If it's like an fund transfer, it will go through consent agenda, or I mean,
That is the expectation now. But it will depend on what type of reports we can get out of Escape to make that easy for the board. Budget changes will not just be a report. But I'm going to institute what I call a fiscal note as to exactly why. That is in your board policy now. And so we'll be doing a little more work on that. And I appreciate the suggestion to codify that so that it does become a system. It's a good suggestion.
Mm-hmm. So my concern is that because local control funding is so new, and we don't have the protections in for certain things, then how do we then control where the money is going once the board makes a priority and then the school sites are moving money around from one place to another? How do we then control all of that and then align it back to the priorities that we've set forth?
Oh, well, I may have misrepresented what I meant. They can only move money from certain categories in what is truly their unrestricted discretionary dollars. Other budget changes will have a different process. They won't be allowed to do that without going through budget, is what it amounts to. So the control is in the budget office. And that's pretty common. I mean, you don't allow people to move money in grants, et cetera, because the grants are very prescriptive as to how those funds must be expended. So that's what I would call it's truly a line item budget with line item control versus discretionary funds at a high school, unrestricted dollars. They're restricted to their object range. The SACS codes, I'm just getting this down, 4,000 to 6,999, just those. But the others are line item budgets. The federal government says the money is fenced. You may not move it outside the fence.
And just getting back to the stakeholder process, I did want to ask that question earlier, so I'm glad Member Arroyo asked it. But again, no response required, just putting it into record. Unfortunately, our superintendent is not here at this time, but we have a representative. And so what I would like to see is that the superintendent, his staff, work with each board member in their respective areas for outreach methodologies, for participation, and for actual engagement of the families and community and other leaders in the community, so that we can promote as much as possible a larger engagement and stakeholder process in this. It is more critical today than it ever has been. And this whole setting up a meeting and going out through Connect Ed or an email or backpack letter home is not enough anymore. And so we need to work with these board members. They get elected in their respective areas, and we know how to get out. And so we need to be utilized a lot more for the stakeholder process.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Item 12.0, business and financial information reports. They are received, and we have public comment.
We have 3 comments on 12.1. Leo Bennett Koshan, Jessica Arriaga, and Grace Trujillo.
Can I give you...
Your attendance reports give you valuable information. As Member Hansen pointed out, they tell you what's going on with your ADA. But this board made a substantive decision, and you based it on capacity. If capacity is such an important variable, you would think that you would want to monitor capacity. You might want to monitor how much is permanent and how much is portable. So you have the details as you're talking about in terms of budget. As you look at the attendance reports, perhaps you can ask, why does CB Wire have 21 schools with lower enrollment than is, and it's being closed? And Mark Hopkins and Joseph Bonheim have 19 schools with lower enrollment. You might want to ask for details why you're closing Washington, which is a bigger school, and sending the students to a smaller school that doesn't have a park adjacent to it. Or why you're closing Fruit Ridge, which is also a bigger school and has a world-class orchard. You got a letter from Slow Food Sacramento asking you to keep it open. Perhaps you should have monthly reports on what's going on with the green initiatives and keeping those plants and 30-year efforts of orchards going at Fruit Ridge. It would make more sense to me to keep it open and move the students and gardeners there. I understand, thank you, that they will be walking now, about a 15-minute walk from other sites to maintain that. Where's the logic in all of that? Perhaps you want to monitor CP Huntington, which you did not close last year because it's not a safe walking school, and make sure that the safety parameters and busing is ongoing. Perhaps you should have monthly reports on those critical variables. And I really, really think perhaps you should have some reports about the transitions. You haven't had any in July, and that should be part of your monthly reports going forward, so that if you do end up closing every school that you have, you know what's happened. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Jessica Arriaga, and I'm glad we've had a lot of conversation about parent engagement, community involvement, and attracting more engagement. What's going to be also critical is keeping them here once they are engaged by encouraging attendance here and participation, but ignoring the voices and ignoring their desires is not going to keep them coming, will not keep them participating with your process. Right now, we're in a from the public's perspective, it's the school board against the parents. We're not working together here. And we're asking to work with you. You have people that I know a lot about health benefits. You have people that, like Grace, who are well informed in accounting. We're not going to charge you for just asking questions and going to your vendors with appropriate questions. We want to be involved because we want to help the district succeed. We're either educating the next doctors or lawyers in our communities, or we're educating the next criminal. These are things that we are responsible for. I know as a parent, I've done anything and everything that I can to ensure that my children are going to get an education that they deserve, as well as other children in my communities. But as board members, are you doing everything possible to make sure that every child that you are responsible for is receiving that same care and consideration? And I appreciate that you're keeping track on how much you may be spending on the lawsuit, but I know how many times we've asked, how much have you spent on the closures of the schools? And we still have not received a figure as to date how much has been spent on the school closures. And I would like to know, how much have we spent thus far of the $1.1 million that you're supposed to save per year? Thank you for your time.
Good evening, members, board members. My name is Grace Trujillo, and I've been speaking at the State Board of Education regarding the new funding, especially the fact of the allocation. One of the questions that I asked was regarding my school, I guess our board, because our board is governance, policy governance, and I said, basically that eliminates all the other committees. How is a board like that going to be able to do the new school funding, the new formula funding? That's my question. What are you guys, and as a board, I ask you, if you're a governance policy board that eliminates all the committees, how are you going to engage that as part of the new funding formula? Because that's a key thing to what's going on. Right now, everybody was allocated 20 minutes, all the CAC committee and DAC. Nobody speaks. I've been coming to these board meetings for years. Nobody speaks those 2 minutes. Nobody engages. And this new funding formula, like I was mentioning, parents are going to be part of the committee and advocating in the voice. If it's not there, and with all these school closures, it's bringing it further apart. And people are seeing what's going on with the school closures. I think it's a time for us to unite and work together, because there's going to be additional money coming in. And hopefully what's going on, their steps and strategies are going to be implemented, and policies are going to be put in place in order for this to continue to happen and parents to be engaged. And like I said, we have a lot of available strategies and concepts as parents that we could bring in. But right now, these parents, as part of the school closures, there's two sides. And I think what we need to do is work together as a team to make school successful. Thank you.
13.0, future board meeting dates and locations, August 1st, 2013, 4:30 p.m. closed session, 6:30 p.m. open session here at the Cerna Center, and August 15th, 2013, 4:30 p.m. closed session, 6:30 p.m. open session here again here at the Cerna Center. Yes. Oh, yes. We have a public comment.
Leo Bennett Koshan.
I would like to urge you to add a special meeting to your future meetings. I think there was a lot of good conversation today, but obviously additional conversation is needed. Most of the people, Member Hansen, in the lawsuit are doing it for free, so they feel the pain from time. They would have stood down if you'd passed the second chance resolution. They've told you they'd stand down if you'd give them a year reprieve. They've told you they'd stand down if you would listen to their charter proposals. So you do have many options besides just spending money in a lawsuit. I'm a firm believer if people talk. So I'd invite you to do what's been done in the past and come down to the community and hold a workshop with the community at the same eye level so that you actually dialogue with the community. It worked really good 4 years ago. I don't know if you've done it since. I think it would be timely now. I think it would be timely to actually answer the questions about the transition and have the staff tell you the net figures. There are no net figures. Please put it on the website. Real net figures, not just, and that's the trouble when you don't have dialogue, because they put up one figure about what the consultant costs, but not the real net figures, ADA loss, PUSing renewals, everything that's associated that's come out little by little. And then in terms of the budget, you've approved a budget. And I'm very concerned that you approved a budget with minimal information that still has 29-year employees hurting. And you approved that budget based on $24 million in a major object code. I urge you to consider the practice of other districts. Don't just look at bottom lines. Look at major object codes. It matters if you're spending that much money on books and supplies instead of people. And you're still projecting your local revenue low. So please do not do that. I am pleasured to have been here, but I'm supposed to say goodbye. I have to take 2 months off. I'm 2 months into extension, and your wonderful officer asks me to say, Monsieur Hansen, c'est à ton tour de te laisser parler d'amour et toute de personne, j'aime la compagnie. Au revoir. He said when I come back I got to dance, but I'm going to work on that one.
I would like to make a move to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second? We have a second by Member Hanson. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned.